Hello, everyone. I'm Amelia Niger, the Education Specialist with the Oracle Applications and Technology Users Group. I'm excited to welcome you all to today's session, Cloud Transformation, Changing Dynamics Along the Cloud Maturity Model. Before we dive in and get started, I'd like to briefly introduce everyone to OATUG in case you're new to our programming. We're a community of Oracle users and we provide education, networking, and support to our members. Make sure to save the date for our Ascend conference next year. It will be at the Caribe Royale Resort in Orlando from June 11th to the 14th. Just a quick reminder for today's webinar, you will be on mute throughout the session. However, you are welcome to send questions at any time through the question box in your control panel, which we will address at the end. You will also receive a brief survey at the conclusion of this webinar, and your response will help us shape the future of our education. If you're interested in receiving CPE credit, your survey response will be required. You will also need to be logged into the session for 50 minutes and post at least one question. We are recording this session, and the recording as well as the slide deck will be available to OATUG members in the knowledge base. You'll see the link for that in the chat area. And now I'd like to introduce today's presenter. We have Pramod Alluri, who's Vice President of Datavale Solutions and Delivery, the Practice Lead Enterprise Applications Division. So thanks so much for presenting, Pramod, and you can take it away.
Yep. Good morning, good afternoon. I think I would say good day, wherever the time zone you guys are. Thank you for the opportunity for going over this. And I just want to take an opportunity to show you guys about how we have progressed the journeys with our customers and some of the experiences and help us to create that conversation topics or thought process about how you guys can take some of the knowledge away and try to apply to your own workplace or your opportunities or challenges to solve. So being said that, let's kickstart. And I'm just going to give a few things before we go there. This is my overview. I've been doing this over a long time, and I've seen the evolution from a green screen all the way down to modernization, what we are currently going through right now. And again, I have a lot more stories to tell. And if you guys have any questions, this hour won't be enough, but we can connect offline and go over some of those topics in a funny discussion. And also, I just want to touch upon some of the housekeeping items. And I said after the presentation, as Amelia mentioned, take a minute for us to give us the survey so that we will take this opportunity to improvise for improving the quality over the next presentations we're going on. And again, I'm just going to go over a little bit of what Datavale is all about. So this is basically an educational session. I just want to give you who we are at a very high level. Just a second here, and then we've been in the industry for some time, and we have been doing this and helping people like you and other customers with the journeys we have done. Then again, let's jump into the agenda. So this topic is very interesting for me and very near and dear about the challenges and opportunities we have in the marketplace and eventually help them to solve and also revalidate our assumptions and stuff. So the agenda is about what is driving the innovation, especially about the scalability of the businesses. And we will touch upon a little bit on how executives look at from a summary perspective. And we will little bit of areas touching around cloud maturity model, some framework, and last but not least, touch upon the food and beverage ecosystem about how complex it is and how we have to look at it from one piece at a time from a cloud adoption model in alignment with the maturity aspects of it. And again, being said that, let's go to the actual dynamics about what is causing us today when we hear news in the market and when we hear news within the company that either we are acquiring a new business or we're acquiring we're coming up with new products and services aspects of it, and eventually what does that do to us? With the infrastructure being there for a long time, we also have to look at saying that how IT or a technology as a service providing that ability for our businesses to grow horizontally and vertically to meet the demand of the market, because these days, the last couple of years has changed how we looked at supply chain or how we looked at the product offerings for the last 100 years. So which tells us that we have to adapt and adopt and scale sustainably. It's not like just what Thomas Edison has done with this bulb by inventing the bulb, but he took an enormous amount of energy to generate the power. So when you flip the switch on, you see the light. How do we make that easy, right? Basically, there's have to have some guidelines around how we gonna, what are the guiding principles around from where we are sitting here. Is we need to look at the relevance, because when we hear about cloud, is cloud relevant to our scenario? And there's also, we need to have a rigor. We need to look at from a positive aspects of it, is from a lens saying that what could be the due diligence and the rigor we need to look for that make it replicable, as well as the consistency across adapting the framework across the enterprise. Because whenever we hear a change, we have to see what can we do about it, and also how we can maximize our investment whenever there's a change. Being said that, again, at the executive leadership levels, they all have something going on. They are saying there are a lot of business goals to meet in order to compete in the market. And again, these days, they run to all types of resources. Eventually, the innovation is one of those. Cloud apparently is becoming one of their buzzword, where click bites, their drive to the work, are sitting in a boardroom. They're all talking about where are we in the cloud strategy. It's been there for a long time, but it's becoming more relevant because of the way our consumers, our products and services are offered in the marketplace. One of the main things they want to understand is that look at how we can deliver some of those goals efficiently with some measurements. Basically, so efficiency is again a fluid thing. When we say efficiency, mean how efficiently doing the right thing again and again and again. Then the velocity, the speed at which a new product's been offered, since the relevance is food and beverages, is how do I keep the product rotating and keeping maximizing our opportunity. But again, when I say velocity, to me, no compromise. We just have to sustainably do it right without having to go through. And the time is a sense, because it's a time to market, we all call it as. It's not just new product introduction, but how about scaling up to be more in the maturity phase and stabilization phase. The focus is actually within looking at internally about what we need as a business to meet the needs and get the goals done, and eventually capabilities, quality, and reliability supports all kind of focus when an executive is looking for. When they are investing in money in an investment in a business, they are looking at a very high level of goals and stuff. So being said that, being a part of the technology standpoint, and there is how do we convince, or how do we go discuss with an opportunity to take our contribution towards aspects of it. There is the maturity model. We all learned a lot, but there are a few alliances in the market. We have seen people are adapting it, because I said nothing is overnight. What got us here over the last 30 years or 10 years or 5 years, unless you are a company who just started from startup in 2008 and beyond, you have the luxury for the latest part of, I call, greenfield. But think about 99% of the companies right now, or organizations right now, are in the brownfield, which means over a period of time they evolved at a sustainable pace. Now lately, with the way the solutions are delivered, the way the applications are delivered for business to consume, is similar to the iPhone service we have from mobility standpoint. So there are a lot of things that are happening, because take the risk away and maximize the usage of it, resulting in bigger thing is data. So now the question is, data has been our breakfast, lunch, and dinner for conversations, because how we grow, looking at the data. The more data we know, more analytical ability we know, that we will able to improvise that stuff. But how do we get there? We need a model. What is that model? And eventually, I think the Alliance group has come up with a model to follow. And again, it starts not just at the technology level. Technology is adapting to business. Business is adapting to the market. And eventually, if you look at it, there is a multiple levels of adoption. We need to start from an enterprise where we need to have a vision and the goals, then eventually come up with the objectives around what key business areas we need to improvise and do from there. Then eventually what the viewpoints are at the execution level, where some of us are, in each of these levels, playing a role play to make sure we are driving business to the modern cloud-ready generation. Again, we all have a role play here, and eventually we all have to look back because all the participant on the call are the stakeholders on the call are having their contribution towards the next generation. But how do we get there? What are the key enablers? There are two types of key enablers here in this any kind of model. One basically is your business capabilities, because it's the business people can tell us what capabilities they're having pain points on, what we need to target them, how do we maximize them. The second aspect of it is, I think most of the participant on the call who represent the technology is what we can bring to the table. It's basically sitting around with all the ingredients of success and basically about lessons learned and put it in a blender and come up with a recipe about what we call key enablers. Basically, if business says, I want to reduce COGS improve my profitability by 10%, which means we all have to go back and put our lenses on and identify where the opportunities are to scale up horizontally and vertically to gain that efficiency. Being said that, like when I said, when we come up with enablers, how do we approach it? Where do we stand in the process? Because as I said before, nothing is overnight. We all have to build the layers of foundation, go back and identify the opportunities and remediate the solutions so it can scale up, and also identify where we stand in this different levels of maturity. When we look at the left side, which is the zero, which means we don't do anything and stay as is, we are running out of runway, basically, before this infrastructure gets obsolete or data gets grown fast enough, or the demand from business is coming to react fast enough, and we still cannot operate around, yeah, we're going to get your report in overnight run because a huge batch of data sitting everywhere, versus drinking from a fire hose is at the level 5. We all know it's not practical. So we need to take baby steps on about test it early about, as I said, relevance and eventually the rigor and repeatability, and also constantly do ourselves saying every stage you go, any improvements are there for us to go back and revisit, because every technology company or solution offering or aspects of it is coming up with the frequent updates around every quarter or every 6 months or every year, because the technology is growing, evolving fast with the latest DevOps or the latest technology and aspects of it. As you get down to 2 and 3, we get to more serious about how we can start maximizing our investments as we go through. The 4 is always comes down to measurable aspect of it, and fixes 5 is optimized, but we all know process improvements are not one and done. It is a continuous improvement. It's an infinite possibilities we have, but what is the best step to start? So it all starts from how we start putting up. These days, we don't call anything a project. Cloud adoption is a program, because we have to start exciting and changing the mindset at all different levels in the organization, because they all have something to contribute. When we said that, I just take one example to kind of go one layer down, like peeling the layers of the onion, is when we sit in a strategy session about, when we talk about, I think most of us have gone through in early stages. Most of them are halfway through your maturity model, and some of them were able to stretch to, I think we are getting to, as I said, we are running out of runway to kind of maximize our investments. So what is the right way? Basically, you're looking at it. Some of the goals, we just have to look at it, what cloud has to offer. One of the biggest nuances being talked about lately, which is also creating some negative presses around data privacy. Yes, with the right rigor and the right security strategy policies, that can be controlled. It all comes down to is, when somebody is providing a service, I cannot give all the keys to the kingdom and expect that to be automatically under control. No, we still are going to have the key, lock and the key. We're still going to have a different technique to identify. We have to validate our data privacy and procedures, because data is the fuel of the economy right now, and eventually use that to our advantage to maximize our, the dollar investments. And some of the assumptions basically is that in this whole journey, it's not like when the initiative is approved by executives, the sponsorship dies there, and we're going to meet it every 6 months. No, actually, the sponsorship has to continue. We need to have a constant checkpoints every frequency. Normally, in our world, is every quarter, but every month we provide them saying how we are progressing our journey. But every quarter we kind of do all hands meeting down saying that yes, this was our quarterly goals and this is what we have achieved, and we were hit and miss. If you can get up to 80% of what you set a goals, then I think that's a world-class kind of improvement. If we had only 20%, then we have to seriously go back to the drawing board, doing a brainstorming session is what is the lessons learned. And eventually based on that, we have to go back and redefine our strategy and say that at this pace, can we meet the demand? And again, not having enough partnership, sponsorship, and commitments from both business and IT and technology. I would not call IT; it's technology, and also the technology has two players right now. One is internal resources, and also the external vendors, right? Which the solutions are. If we are all have built an ecosystem of collaboration, we get there. Where some of the failure scenarios we found was there will be a time where you're the crossroads. That's when we say that people compromise with the budget and the time. They end up doing band-aid solutions. But our approach has been that if you do short term, which is band-aid, but don't lose focus on but midterm goals and also the long-term strategy. If we don't have that improvement capabilities, which means it's going to come back and we will be bleeding faster enough that our band-aid's going to rip off and it's going to cost us more. And also second aspect of it is how we going to measure by not just isolated versions of it, how we going to measure and build a PR around what the gains are by having the cloud and also showing our CISOs, which is information security officers and others, saying that we're still under the lock-in protection key and sustain with all the gains and challenges we have. Based on this, I think we have to do an exercise saying that we need to have a hard look at it. Anything as a service, whether it could be a software or some technology versus on-prem. What is the gains? We have to have a measurable gains, and also we hear a lot of terms that it's a magic pill, but unless you apply in your environment and have to go through the same relevance, rigor, and reliability, and as a repeatability, if we don't have those kinds of measures, we all will have the TLDR moment and said we take that drink from a Kool-Aid standpoint, and eventually we might head into a bigger risk of stuff. But how do we go back? We just have to have as a checkpoints and say that where is our maximum benefit? You might be a niche player in the food industry, but with the blockchain and other kind of technologies, you hear a lot, but they're not overnight success. We just have to understand what relevance and security and opportunity it brings us to the table. Just an example, right? We all have to go through these tough questions as an architect, whether you're a technical architect or whether it's a solution architect, whether enterprise architect or a business architect, looking at this and say that where is my technology? How we maximize the technology to help us to get there, and where are high risks, medium risks, and low risks from a disruption, from scale, from also the success aspect of it. Every end of the day, everybody wants us to be successful, right? Basically, that's where the stuff is. And then once you have this, then we need to categorize into a metrics like this. That I just took an example of telecom being a complex, but it's relevant. It's not telecom. It could be food. It could be anybody. The reason for that is we have anything as a service is very relevant in telecom because the manufacturers will want to be a part of the skin in the game, and also the service providers are. As you and all of us are on the call, without the right bandwidth and without the right scenario, we will not be able to conduct all this virtually. So again, as it's growing, they are outsourcing it to the manufacturer to kind of monitoring and all kinds of technologies, but some of them are business to business, some of them are internal improvements, some of them could be delivering to our consumer. Again, I can correlate telecom will be as, and even I think food and beverage is even more complex than telecom, but everything is an innovation. If I don't innovate as one of the industry vertical, I will never be successful. So being said that, I want to go down to one level down so that how is this happens to my food and beverage industry, right? It's a life cycle. It's an ecosystem. Everything is a product, and the short shelf life has it, and eventually you have to have promotions. You need to sell them before it gets the need by use life date, and eventually you have verticals all over the place. Your product could be sold through various channels, and it could be delivered directly to a store, because this is basically the faster you get the product in your hands of your consumer, the better you are to understand the potential aspect of it. And if the product is not having a good run rate, we have to immediately do pivot, because we have to commit first, then measure, and also do the pivot so that our exposure is well aspects of it. Again, all these are integrated into an integrated business planning with ERP aspects of it and the core aspects of financials or the back office. But in a food and beverage ecosystem, there are ERP on top of ERP, whether it's a point of sale, which is an ERP, whether it's a distribution, it could be an own ERP, and it could be, the verticals could be an ERP, but eventually you need to have a corporate system and also the other aspects of it. And I would say it's a multi-partner, and I would say multi-corporations, and also because of the food and beverage have a shelf life, some can travel all the way. If it's a Fiji water, travels all the way on a container on a ship containers to US, versus the milk, which has a perishability aspect unless you have a ultra high heat, where you lose all the bacteria, all the main stuff around, which can have a longer shelf life, because it's all about getting in the hands. Because once it goes into the shelf on a retail store, our goal has to be to making sure that gets consumed on time. If it is not, we need to get the data from the POS system and see that how do we rectify. Being said that, we mapped basically what are the benefits we're going to gain in the sector for consistency, and eventually reporting ability, and also the agility aspect of it, and then the cost benefits of it. So these are the four very high level, where they're all intertwined to about information everywhere. Information means data. Data means that not necessarily we use a traditional techniques about consuming API or consuming a flat file here and there, but you should have to have kind of a centralized location, especially when it comes to food safety. We all have to do some mock runs around it, but where is the data coming from? You all have to have partners, work with them to have quality data, so that we can respond, react before we get into the harmful ways. Again, these are some of the challenges we have, and the cloud and the data everywhere, and various techniques we have. The food inspector all the way down to the product development guy, in the recipe management, people can take a look at it and say that how do we tweak, how do we make things happen. Being said that, how is this translate to the ecosystem? There are multi-vendor, as I said that, right? But when it comes down to the application ecosystem, there is like multitude of applications. There's no one, I would call it as one cookie size fits all. And because we all have gone through, if you're in the segment, you have gone through various applications, various integration points, various information exchange. Now, what is the key? The master data quality management, and also the aspect of what is your trust about the information you're receiving from your partner, whether it is trade promotion rebates or whether it is your quality data, the rejects, returns, all kinds of stuff. But it's not about physically reverse logistic, but why, what, when, and how. Basically the information we need to know so that we can scale up to the ecosystem, to the floor, and rectify some of those things. But it's also time is matters. There are a few niche players in ERP, but there are very, very niche players in the food side where they can capture data from machines and give us that signal about analogy-wise how do we digest and go from there. Just an idea about how complex this can become, but it also poses a challenge. It's an adversity, but there's also an opportunity. How we look at the opportunity, how we make it successful. Being said that, we have multiple options. If you take a journey, that there are, as we talked about, this is not new, but how do we scale this up? We have, let's say, if we have not started any initiative, we need to chunk it, as I said earlier. Then where do we start? Where is your pain thing is a lot of the customers are going as is, or operate in a cloud where you can have scale and vertical, where they're just only invested in infrastructure side. But it's not overnight. You have partners here. How do we integrate when you go from one of the cloud providers? Then you move up, where you can launch a server when you have a performance issues, when we can collect the data on demand. But making that first switch, convincing that there's no business disruption, and also showing the scalability and how we go up, how we go through the stabilization mode, and eventually start standardizing. I think this food and beverage industry has got, over a period of time, we have accrued a lot of customizations. When I say customizations, is your data is not structured, but I think if you're part of the EDI, at least you have an EDI. Lately they got B2B, then you have all other kinds of data coming from mobile. When mobility start coming in, it costed us much more standardization process, but it's coming down. We have a lot of technical debt around consuming and transforming and basically and loading in and maintaining multiple copies. I think recently I read an article that back in the day we used to have one big database. Now we have, I think, depending on needs of the organization in food and beverage, we have 5 copies of it. But how do we make the copies available based on the need? Immediate need versus midterm need versus long-term need, but eventually how consistent the information is. Again, that's where we need to start targeting some of this information consumption and usage. And eventually SaaS is SaaS because that's the extreme aspects of it. Everybody says that, but eventually how we can stabilize it, maximize, and take advantage of the new innovations, features, and how like us, if you're in a food and beverage industry, like your counterparts are also contributing to the cause, invest in the right SaaS provider, the software as a service provider who is listening from the market, innovating from the market, from a social standpoint, and giving you guys all the even platform ability to scale. Will that be fit for everybody? You have to subject it to your own niche requirements. Again, we have various deployment options. These are the main ones right now. And there's a fourth one is brewing called, as I am increasing my spend and OPEX and CAPEX, can I have a hybrid environment that's coming up, but still it has to be a blend of one of these opportunities for us. Being said that, again, and most of the organizations were successful to do this evolution journey, basically, is you have to crawl and you have to walk. Every time you crawl and walk, look for any kind of opportunities left behind. Then we can come back and say that how we do that and what can it pose us for a long-term journey before you go there. It's a retrospect of it, and eventually use the lessons learned. Because if each stage is anywhere from 6 to 9 months, basically mean there's some changes happen. Whether it is in your software providers, whether it is your technology providers, because I don't think technology from a machine standpoint is changing that fast, but when it comes down to when a few of these venture capitalists said software is eating the hardware world, eventually means software is driven all kinds of controls, eventually, which mean they're also improvising as they're learning on a DevOps model. They're delivering us in a continuous improvement in continuous delivery aspects of it in a way that the functionality is not there today. If that continues over next couple of quarters, which means we have to live with that, as I said, work around our assumptions, staying within the standard. But the other aspects of it basically is whenever there's a release update or consumption happens, how we are sustaining on a quarterly basis without any disrupting. As you start doing it, we're going to learn a lot, and we put a journey together. And eventually, we will become, I think most of the IT organizations we have seen have evolving to be a service provider within the stuff so that we can meet the needs of the business and eventually go through it again. It's 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 that adapt, adopt, and sustain is the mantra right now in the market. As a result, we will journey the evolution aspect of it. Again, I think we have seen this successfully adapted, but it's a long journey. It's a program. It also needs a lot of patience. There will be a testing times. We all will have to make a decision on it, but we need to make decision with the lessons learned, all the feedback. Now we have a luxury aspect of it with all aspects of stakeholders. Again, as we say, the journey, I think people will be success. It's a framework. We all have to apply to each of it, what applies to you, and maybe you have to innovate this framework to meet your needs. Or being said that, again, I think I appreciate the time to go with me around it, but there is, again, somehow the same thing I'm going to repeat, but I'm open up for questions, Amelia, at this time. I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, we'd love to give the audience a moment to go ahead and type in your questions to the question box. Go ahead and send those through, and I'd be happy to read those out to Pramod to go ahead and answer those. You'll also note in the chat area, we have the link posted to our knowledge base where you'll be able to access this recording and the slide deck within 24 hours. So if there's someone you believe who could have also benefited from this webinar, please send that link their way.
And then I appreciate all of you for the time spent to go through, but I'm open to answer any questions. If you cannot finish during the session, you still have my email address to reach out. We can chat, and we can see we can be of any help clarifying some of the challenges you're going through, because no two challenges are the same.
Pramod, what would you say is a common challenge that you often receive questions about?
There are two challenges. One was basically that uncertainty we might see about how do we manage the strategy around scaling up, about how do we start layering, what would be the right area to look for. One of the bigger thing is sitting down as a team and come up with a consensus around saying that how do we target, and because big bang was the dated kind of approach in the past, but when you do this, where to start from, right, eventually. And also the challenges around it is how do we manage our OPEX? The second part around is when you're investing in technology, we have a certain OPEX today, but the intangibles, what the time spent and the aspects of it is how do we measure, start working towards it. These are the two major challenges I hear about. Is one is where is the starting point based upon where you look at it, because you need to have a metrics around high value, low impact versus mid value, and again also disruption aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is that how do we manage a sustainable budget around and manage measurable metric.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. A question we also received, I'll go ahead and post in the chat here. Is there a template to evaluate cloud migration strategy?
Yes, we have, I think, devised a template depending on how you look at it, based upon your ecosystem, basically looking at business processes, how connected or how much partner led versus how much internal led. And we have a strategy look at it. We put together the questionnaire and come up with the basis points around it, and that's how we establish a standard template for that.
All right. Let's see. Another question that just came through. Do you have templates by industries?
Yes, because no two industries are the same, but we are trying to, one thing we are trying to do, I think what I've seen successful was there is always a best practice in the industry because of the what evolution of over a period of time in supply chain, financial services, and all kinds of ecosystems. That is your baseline, and eventually every industry has the volume, velocity, and veracity or variability aspect of it we measure. As a result, there is an opportunity for automation. But and short answer is yes. We have to tailor made for certain industry, and that. But everything is of the baseline of industry best practices, because there is a certain ways you do things depending on whether it is you're doing volume or velocity or variety of things you do in your industry.
Thank you for that. We've got a few more coming in here. So the next one is, what are some approaches to avoid a big bang approach for ERP?
Again, we need to look at it, right? Normally, time to value, delivering value to the business to keep them warm and happy that they're gaining so that they become an internal PR aspects of it. One of the biggest areas first we need to get through in any kind of approach we look at is to target the areas of compliance, because most of the ecosystem I've seen in food and beverage have been working on, and when it comes to compliance aspects of it, that's number one. The second aspect of it is if you're modernizing functionality instead of customizing or enhancing with your stuff, we treating us to be separate. There are solutions available to vet out and target them first to keep our customer experience, whether it's internal customer or external, and keep our compliance, I would call it as a compliance team and internal audit team, so that we have less material weaknesses to deal with. Again, big bang could be that there will be a lot of stress on overall organization about investing, not seeing the value. But when you chunk them out like a Lego blocks with this, with the current solutions in the market, we can start adapting to open standards or integration standards and stuff. We can start targeting and stuff. We have seen some patterns around that when they were moving a legacy ERP to the cloud. Everybody wants to be fixed, but we started targeting first stabilizing the financial reporting if it comes down to compliance aspects of it, and also financial planning, then start laying the foundation for all other sub processes. And again, that way that solves some of the compliance and standards. But when we look at a supply chain, we look at the where the value is we have to focus on, and eventually, if you're a service-based industry, you need to make sure your customer experience is targeted. And if you are in a B2C, you are targeting more around ease of use and seamless ability to sustain. And then when it comes to the procurement organization, we need to look at how you collaborate with your vendors so that we can gain some efficiency. So big bang, unless you're a very small company where you can afford to have element of learning curve, big bangs are going to work. But if you are a large organization where you have so many moving parts, you just have to make sure that we have to have a scale-up strategy around it so that we can show value to the business and start growing with it.
Thank you so much. All right, our next question. What is the challenge to communicate with Oracle SR for support?
Again, it's a good question. I think it's from when it comes to any vendor, not just Oracle, any vendor. When we are engaging with them, the first question in the selection process we should ask is that we don't own the product, we lose control lately, right? In the legacy world where we had certain element of, because I've seen enough of the stuff that whenever I say some kind of an enhancement, which means we have certain element of access, since updates or upgrades are not often enough. So we were deviated from the median. But anytime, which is whether it's Oracle or any provider you're engaging with, where they're giving you as a service to consume their application, you need to ask for request to resolution, and also we need to ask for how do we differentiate, and we need to ask for when you have an immediate need, we need a short-term solution from the vendor, and also look for what is the long-term aspects of it, either next release or further release. Whether you're dealing with Oracle or whether you're dealing with any big company, that SLAs are met. I know people have a lot more challenges around, but with Oracle, we have led conversation for help customers to create an SR to get a short term so that we can keep the lights on and moving, but did not leave there. Work with the business. If that is as an enhancement needed, we actually encouraged our customer base and also business users to write a use case to be in a part of social innovation labs within Oracle to educate the Oracle as well. As a partner, we help them to gain some of these challenges for them so that as a product manager, as a strategist, as a vendor side, there are a lot of people are looking at it differently than I would call 25, 30 years ago. So basically they are open for that because they want to make this as a platform for everybody to leverage, because any product is not meant for your business. We are using those platforms like Lego blocks to use it for your business. So we need to have a very good relationship and also good understanding of SLAs. I know there will be skies falling moment happens for every business user, but we need to get the business user work around. If it is 1Z and 2Z, that's okay. But if it is a volume, it's not okay, right? Because it costs us more by the minute than before. So to your point is three things. And when you're selecting the vendor, talk them through what the SLA, what the opportunities are for priority 1, 2, and 3. Second part is how open are they for innovation side so that they provide us a strategy. If the feature is not available today, how much extensible we can do till they release a feature. And the third part is how much open are they receiving our use cases to be at some point part of their platform in the future, because all these companies want automatically the consumption like any other services they want to be.
All right. Our next question, is it more important to meet every department's requirements fully, even if it means multiple databases, or have everyone on one centralized database, even if some groups' requirements are not met 100%?
Yeah, it's a very great question. I think actually, if you look at marketing, they have their own database. CRM has their own database because some of the data, depending on how you look at it, are you looking from a back office perspective? Are you looking from a historical planning and analysis perspective? Are you looking from the marketing databases, which are relevant information but not applicable to it? But these days, one of the new thing it's been happening is irrespective of what application you're moving on or off from, there are companies who have been on for 100+ years. The knowledge of that data has to be centralized at some point. So there's a lot of patterns about you hear a lot of jargons about data lakes, their lake houses and stuff. Ultimately, they're building an ecosystem around product ecosystem, which is a customer ecosystem and all kinds of stuff where all the data get merged into one place for looking at strategically, irrespective of databases, because for customer experience of data, it can originate in one place, but it can merge into a bigger scale about how do you anticipate a churn of a cycle of a customer? How do you expect how fast the product is moving? So there is from an analytical perspective, we need to standardize that information layer, and from a tactical perspective, we need to have the localized Apple data, which eventually get merged into information layer. But as a business user, They want something like google.com. I type something, I need to get something. And we all know as a technologist that takes some heavy lifting to get there. But when we are designing our models, when you're looking at the stuff, we have seen people use that standard models in the industry, going after the some of those industry standard stuff you have where they're aligning with their data models in it and building their future analytical data sources aspect of it at the granular level, not just summarized like star schema in the past, but they want granular level so that if I have to migrate all the 100 years worth of data, ERP cannot sustain with performance, but they need to find those repositories where it can have petadata worth of analytics can be done at a mass scale. I think a lot of companies have shown in the data engineering aspects of it that how do we get the data moved over workloads and use them for their advantage. And I think there are some good industry patterns evolving right now. They're getting very much maturity to kind of solve some of these data issues.
All right, looks like we have one last question in the chat here. I'm going to post. Do you have presence in federal, state, and locals?
We have done local and state, federal. Again, occasionally we have to go through that stuff. We have customers who are federal customers with ITAR and all other regulations we strictly follow. We also have high security standards as a company, and again we have led some of these engagements of workload migrations in that space and also working through the standardized mapping. But we're very active around state and municipalities and stuff because also working wherever the opportunities surface for us to work through the workloads. Yeah.
All right, we got to thank you. So appreciate that, Pramod, for answering all of our questions. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation. And to all of our attendees, thank you for coming out this afternoon. And since I don't see any additional questions in the chat here, that does conclude this session. Pramod, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for their valuable time from the busy schedule. And these are great questions. All are great,
Yeah.
relevant questions every day. Every day, this is what wakes me up in the morning at 2 a.m. and say that what problem, what challenge we will be running into, because there's a lot more to be done and a lot more stories to tell. We all learn from stories and and as we have seen through the evolution. One other thing is, I think I just want to announce it. I think we are some ways away, but I will be in person in the Orlando event coming up. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to my email. We're open for a conversation. We can talk about it and we'll go through, see what it can be of resourcefulness for you guys to solve your own business problems.
Can't wait.
Thank you
That
very
was
much.
fantastic. Thank you again. All right, this concludes our session. Everyone, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Thank you very much and have a great day.